Hi, this is Jack Stanley. I'd like to have a little bathrobe conversation with you this morning. And I wanted to talk about several things. I'd like to talk about the very nature of man. And that's a mouthful if you think about it, because who are we? I talked about this a while ago, but I wanted to expand upon it a little bit. First off, in this modern age, we have fields of thought. We have fields of archaeology. We have fields of geology. We have fields of theology. And of course, this is what's involved in creating our historic record. We have our historians. Each of them carefully guard their ideologies. And if something they cannot truly prove, it's a hypothesis. And what is the definition of a hypothesis? I think that's it. But the thing is, I wanted to talk about some of the bizarre things that have happened in the field of history, archaeology, science, and why there is such a backlash by so many to basically make some parts of our history non-relevant. Now, we as a species, we have been around for a while, and we are one of many types of humans to inherit this earth. There were many before us, many different types, many different species. We're very, very close to the apes. We're only like 2 chromosomes away. If you think about it, it's pretty amazing. But we have fields of religion, we have fields of science, we have fields of archaeology, and many times they have issues with modern, current thought. Let me throw one at you that I find rather fascinating. And that is in ancient Egypt, or in modern Egypt, if I may put it this way, there is something called the Sphinx. And the Sphinx is part of ancient Egypt as we know it. Talked to us an awful lot by Egyptian scholars, Egyptologists. There was an individual who was well versed in the history of Egypt, named Jonathan West, who noticed all around the Sphinx was evidence of water erosion. And so, being not a geologist himself, he went to a geologist, Professor Schock, and said, "Come with me. I want to show this to you." So they went. Schock saw the Sphinx and said, "My God, that is indeed water erosion." And you know something? Had this been a cliff anywhere in the world, when they notice that, they say, yes, indeed, it looks like erosion from around 12,000 years ago, when there was a massive amount of floods on the earth. But we have a problem, because being that it's in Egypt, the Egyptologist and the archaeologists have decided, and it is dogma, that the Sphinx was built, a little over 4,000 years ago. Not 12,000 years ago. Now you have to remember, let's say 5,000 years ago in ancient Egypt, it was bone dry. But 9,000, 10,000, 11,000, 12,000 years ago, it was wet. And that fits the historic narrative, but it does not fit the narrative of academic circles. Therefore, they are not willing to accept it. That's an interesting thing. I mean, first off, Professor Schock had to speak because they wouldn't let Jonathan West speak because he didn't have a PhD. Now, immediately, something that comes to mind with me is, would I rather speak to someone who has innate natural knowledge, great knowledge, or someone who has a piece of paper that states that they might have it? So he couldn't speak to them. That is asinine. And of course they were very condescending, pushy, and nasty to Professor Schock because they said that's impossible. They've already decided. Their minds are closed. Do you see the craziness of this? See, the problem is with ancient Egypt, we know some of its history. We don't know all of it. And the Egyptians had stories of floods in history. And they talked about those that preceded them. But we don't talk about those much because Egyptian history has already been written. And many an archaeologist, many an Egyptologist is not going to damage their reputation or their career by looking in different directions. I think that's wrong. But that's very true in so many aspects of life. In the nature of man, we don't even understand ourselves. Do we truly understand the nature of our own consciousness? No. Do we understand the nature of the brain, how it operates? We know parts of it. But it would be a rash individual that would say we understand it all, because we don't. There's so much that we don't understand about life. There's so much that we don't understand about ourselves. And we call it in scientific circles a hypothesis. And what is the definition of a hypothesis? Might be, maybe, kinda, I think. It's hardly something to go on. Look at space. Oh, it's a war field, all kinds of battlefields over space, because there are various ideologies. And we don't truly understand a lot about space. We're finally coming to the understanding that there was life on Mars, and it seems to be a catastrophic event took place a long, long time ago, long before man. Other things that are kind of interesting as well is look at how we as humans have poo-pooed ideas such as Atlantis, which was talked about by Plato, with lots of information and dates. Yet, we are willing to accept this whole thing about Noah's Ark, which is equally foolish, as far as I'm concerned, to Atlantis. Atlantis was told by those who had intelligence. Now, I'm sorry to say that a good deal of religious circles did not favor intellectual thought. They wanted to go with religious dogma. And they would destroy what they considered dangerous. Look at the Library of Alexandria. It was destroyed out of ignorance. Look at how the Christian church early on talked about the sun, that the sun revolved around the earth. The ancient Greeks knew, first off, that the world was round, that it circled the sun. They knew the order of the planets, those that were known at least. But this was basically disregarded by those who were in charge of our knowledge. And so today we have this hodgepodge of information. We have various researchers who jealously guard their knowledge. And therefore, Jonathan West, stating about water erosion in Egypt when the Sphinx isn't anywhere near as old enough to have endured such damage. But isn't it possible that it's not the age they think it is? They're not even willing to concede. They're not even willing to think. Where are the pottery shards? Well, you know something? Pottery shards are being found in various areas of the earth that are much earlier than any of our historians ever dreamed. Look at space, look at life, look at religion. Because we think that we're very intelligent. I wish it was so. But basically, we're a frightening group of individuals. We all inhabit this planet called Earth, and we're one of the many species who have been on it. And each of us in our tribal lives, in our tribal groups, have created our own religions. And each religion disagrees with the other. And we are willing to kill each other in the name of these religions. Doesn't that show you how foolish this is? Doesn't that show you how ridiculous this is? I look at other things that are kind of fascinating and frightening at the same time. We are looking at various parts of the earth and talking about this and that, about which is real, which is not, what is dogma, what is not. And we have various individuals who tell us what our history is. Well, you know something? History and knowledge is an ongoing process. If we close our minds to more knowledge or understandings of knowledge, we don't advance as a species. And that could be the whole problem with Atlantis. Maybe they refused to advance themselves. And they would be consumed by the very world which they refused to accept. We have many different religions. We have many different concepts of life. And we think, once again, we are intelligent. And yet we're very animalistic. We kill each other all the time. And yet, within these fields of sciences, geology, archaeology, Egyptology, and more, we have these people who are in charge, who have no intention of changing their views. And very much like a governor on a machine, it's controlled. And it does not change its speed, it does not change its style, no matter what free-thinking individuals may suggest. My feeling is it's time to shake the bottle a little bit and agitate it a little bit, because it's time that we drop many of our illusions and look at new, interesting, and advanced ideologies that are coming forth through the various people who are doing research. There's so much that we need to learn. You know, I'm reminded of a great individual. His name was Frederick Douglass, African American. And he was our minister to Haiti, actually. But as a very old man, a young fella came to see him. And he said, "Mr. Douglass, what shall I do with my life?" Douglass looked at him and said, "Agitate, agitate, agitate." And in the fields of science, in the fields of archaeology, in the fields of Egyptology, in the fields of religion, in the fields of general thought, I can think of nothing better than that phrase: agitate, agitate, and agitate. Thank you.